You're glowing today.
Wow, that is incredibly kind of you. I've been trying out a new skincare routine. It's the same one that Patrick Bateman uses in American Psycho. You know, the one with the ice packs, the deep pore cleansing, and an intense sense of self-importance. Something I think you can really relate to. I also recently changed up my foundation routine, but if you want a full breakdown on my beauty regimen, you're going to need to follow the Mormon News Roundup on Instagram. Now, please don't let me stop you from showering me with, well, more compliments. Tell me more about, myself.
So did you know that worshiping Jesus Christ is for dummies?
The classic straw man argument. Cheap, lazy, and not remotely original. For the record, I would never say that worshiping Jesus is for dummies, but I do find the entire concept of worship rather absurd. Why would any rational being need to grovel before anyone or anything? And what exactly makes worship necessary? I mean, I have children and I would never expect them to worship me, nor would I desire it in any way. And why do we need to worship a failed apocalyptic preacher from 2,000 years ago? But let's get real about the situation. Even Mormon apostles can't decide who we're supposed to worship. Mormon theologian Bruce R. McConkie said that we are supposed to worship only the Father, not Jesus. Does that make him a dummy? And let's not forget that Brigham Young taught that we were supposed to worship Adam, our father and our God, the same Adam that was in the Garden of Eden. A bizarre idea that even the church has tried to memory hole it. So I guess Brother Brigham is a dummy as well? No cap. And then let's not forget about James E. Talmage, who helped cement the idea that Jesus was actually Jehovah of the Old Testament. And let's entertain that idea just for a moment here. Even though Jesus in the Bible never claimed to be God, but if Jesus really is Yahweh, he has a lot to explain before I would even think about bowing my knee to him. I mean, are we talking about that same psychopathic deity who endorsed slavery, sexism, genocide, racism, raping women to punish their husband, human sacrifice, child brides? Oh, and let's not forget the charming moment that he said that picking up sticks on the wrong day meant that someone was deserving of death. And if that's not enough for you, in 3 Nephi chapter 9 in the Book of Mormon, Mormon Jesus indiscriminately wipes out entire civilizations and cities, including men, women, and children, just to make some kind of a sick point. So before I would even entertain the idea of worshiping this character, I'm gonna need to have a hell of a lot explained to me. Because unlike you, I don't worship genocidal psychopaths. But folks, that's really not the point. Jackson Paul here is not interested in making a genuine argument. He'd rather build ridiculous caricatures and then knock them down.
Bro, your muscles are looking massive today.
Oh wow, you finally noticed. Finally, all those early morning gym sessions are really paying off. I've been grinding out some serious gains. And I must say, I'm feeling pretty fantastic about all of it. And since you noticed and have appreciated me so much, if you'd go over to my Patreon site and join up as a member, that would be much appreciated. Thanks for paying it forward. So once again, yes, flattery will get you everywhere. Please, go on.
Also, did you know that reading the scriptures is for stupid people?
Another weak strawman argument. Yawn. I'd never claim that reading scriptures is stupid. There's a lot of value to be found inside of religious texts, whether it's in the poetic beauty of the Psalms or the Proverbs, or the historical value or cultural significance. And here's the thing. If billions of people have structured their lives around the laughable fables contained in sundry hallowed books, it's probably worth understanding what's inside those books. But instead of this childish oversimplification, reading the scriptures is stupid, why not ask some real questions? Like how do we know that any of the supernatural events that are contained in these books actually happened? Or how do we determine if a holy book is reliable or divinely authored? Or how do we explain the contradictions, the scientific absurdities, and the anachronisms that are found in the pages? Or which parts of the scriptures are literal and which are metaphorical, and how could we possibly be able to differentiate between the two? And how do we determine which of any of the religious traditions are true? And what methodology exists to separate divinely inspired texts from human-made mythology? And finally, how can we have any confidence whatsoever in any particular canon of scripture? Now, personally, I have never seen a compelling reason to take any hearsay holy book as authoritative, much less the LDS scriptural canon. But of course, Hayden isn't interested in engaging with these actual, real questions from critics. No, sir. He's too busy setting up weak strawman arguments only to knock them down with his famous smug grin. Classic.
Is that a new shirt? If it's not, you're just wearing it well.
I appreciate it, my friend. You're really speaking my language here. Compliments wrapped in a bizarre veneer of absurdity. Honestly, this video was a wild ride. You seamlessly switch between genuinely kind statements and completely off-the-wall questions like some kind of a theological whiplash. Must be that good old-fashioned cognitive dissonance that theists bring to the table.
Going to church is dumb.
You know, it's pretty funny that I'm going to be debunking Hayden's arguments here when he's supposed to be representing the critics' positions, which I guess is supposed to be my position, but unsurprisingly, he's not representing the critics in any honest way. But sure, I'll play along. As far as the claim that going to church is dumb, well, for almost 24 years, I worked full or part-time for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, so my job literally depended upon me attending LDS church every Sunday. If I wanted to provide food for my family, maintain job security, and keep my professional connections intact, I literally had to go. In that case, skipping church might be considered dumb. It would be financial self-sabotage. And how about another point here? In areas of the world where Latter-day Saints have a significant population, you know, like Utah, Idaho, or Arizona, a lot of people go to church because they know that it's good business. You know, if a dentist suddenly stops attending his or her local ward, some Latter-day Saint patients will magically take their business somewhere else. That can have serious financial consequences. And so I wouldn't call ensuring your family's financial stability dumb. And just a couple of more quick points. Some folks attend church just to support their believing family members. You know, maybe their spouse is devout, or they just don't want to rock the boat at home. Again, these are strategic decisions, not dumb decisions. You know, and I've read that many African converts join Mormonism to gain financial stability, access church resources, or take advantage of discounted educational programs. If religion is functioning as a stepping stone to a better life, I can totally understand those decisions. So what I'm trying to tell you is that there's plenty of smart reasons to attend church, especially if you crave potential social and perhaps even potential economic benefits that come with it. Now, if you're trying to go to church because you think that it's true, you know, you believe it's the one and only place to find that further light and knowledge that the Father promised to send but never did, well, I hate to break it to you, but that light never showed up. And the knowledge, well, let's just say that it's lacking. If finding divine wisdom is your reason for showing up every Sunday, then yeah, I'd say that's a spectacular waste of time.
You have beautiful eyes.
Once again, you are too kind, my friend. But I have to be honest with you, I'm using a filter. In reality, I'm a 500-pound guy living in my mom's basement who got everything that I know from reading a few ex-Mormon Reddit posts. Not that there's anything wrong with that, of course.
Also, did you know that God doesn't exist?
Look, if you're going to throw out these questions, can you at least make them interesting? This is just a really elementary way of approaching this topic. And it's not the kind of argument that I personally would make or have made. Also, I guess Hayden is representing kind of a hard stance of atheism here. You know, the claim that someone knows that there are no gods. That's a positive claim that I find in the minority of the atheist community. And hard atheism is simply not a position that I take. What I do say is that it's extremely unlikely that any gods exist. At least any that resemble the ones humans have cooked up. But knowing that there are no gods? That's a claim that would require some proof, for lack of a better word, just like claiming to know that there is a god. And just to round out this particular section, a far more common position of atheists is to say that there aren't compelling rational reasons to accept any god claim, and that there is no good evidence of the supernatural, including any of Hayden's imaginary best friends. So if you could allow me to pull a David Bednar and rephrase your question, I would phrase it this way. Did you know that there is no good evidence for any god? Or perhaps more technically precise, did you know that no god claim has met its burden of proof?
You shut your mouth.
Wait, what the f***?
You shut your mouth and you don't listen to him.
Hey pal, you don't get to tell me who I listen to. Because I'm not part of a cult, I'll listen to whomever I want, whenever I want. But yeah, this is classic religious thought policing, trying to shut down critics and control who gets to hear dissenting opinions. It's a perfect example of how Mormonism operates under the BITE model. You know, behavior, information, thought, and emotional control. This is literally information control in action. Don't even listen to the critics. Gee, I wonder why.
You shut your mouth and you don't listen to him because he is an antichrist that is employing the first rule of all antichrists.
Oh wait, he's talking to his brother. My bad. I got it now. Now, I would apologize, but I don't seek for apologies, nor do I give them. Where have I heard that from? Anyway, the first rule of antichrists is that we don't talk about antichrists. That sounds suspiciously like Fight Club.
that flattery will get you everywhere.
Well, out of all of the ridiculous arguments that we've heard thus far, I think this is the one that takes the cake. The atheists that I know aren't exactly the flattery types. In fact, quite the opposite. Christopher Hitchens had an acidic tongue that could melt steel. And Sam Harris is known for his controversial opinions that have pissed off billions of theists and thousands of atheists. Or how about Matt Dillahunty, perhaps one of the least flattering people on the planet? Ask anyone that he's debated. Or how about Aaron Ra, who's an ex-Mormon, by the way? I don't think he's ever used flattery in his entire life, nor would I expect him to. Like, what are you even talking about that atheists use flattery? All of the atheists that I know in the public sphere are constantly being accused of being rude, condescending, and even insulting. So this is really important. The first rule of the atheist that I respect is simply not that flattery will get you everywhere. And just so we're clear for the purposes of responses in this video, I'm using the terms atheist and antichrist synonymously.
If you want to avoid deception and defeat the devil, then get your copy of Jeffrey Border's The Antichrist Playbook today.
Well, if avoiding deception is the goal, I'd recommend staying as far away from the Stick of Jello channel and any of its social media platforms as possible. That's a solid step in avoiding deception. Same goes for Jeff Borders, hard pass. And as for defeating the devil, demons aren't real, my friend. Breathe a sigh of relief and welcome to 2025, where we deal in facts and not absurd fairy tales. And as far as purchasing your propaganda Antichrist book, if the Antichrist Playbook is anything like the childish arguments I've heard so far, that's a 2 thumbs down proposition.
The Antichrist.
Now, I want to make one thing crystal clear. I've never claimed that people who worship Jesus or go to church or read the scriptures are stupid or dummies. That's really a straw man argument, and I believe highly disingenuous. I already elucidated a number of reasons that people might want to go to church. And there's plenty of intelligent, thoughtful people throughout history who have held religious beliefs. I mean, like Isaac Newton or Charles Darwin. Those are a couple of names that come to mind. These gentlemen were brilliant minds, and neither of them really lived in a world where the supernatural is viewed with the high degree of skepticism that it has today. What's far more accurate, or I would say nuanced, is to say that people who believe in the supernatural or believe that that realm is real, in general don't seem to care much about whether their beliefs are probably true or in actuality true. And that's the real point. I mean, lots of smart people believe in UFOs, Bigfoot, or other phenomena. Just because someone holds an idea without rational justification or reliable evidence doesn't automatically make them an idiot. In fact, it doesn't diminish their intelligence as a whole. But here's where I take issue. When you believe in something without a good reason, especially in something for which there's no credible evidence, you're gambling with your own rationality. It's like losing a little piece of your intellectual integrity, a fragment of, dare I say, your soul. Now, when it comes to the Paul brothers, here's where the criticism stands. They advocate for a worldview where demons are real, where magic is possible, and where anthropomorphic immortals magically look out for them. That's definitely their prerogative, but the onus is definitely on them to provide a demonstration of the reality of these beliefs. And until they do, I'd say they're just peddling pseudo-spiritual fantasies with no grounding in evidence. Now, let's check out the book a little bit.
The Antichrist.
The Antichrist Playbook, a guide for young Mormons. Oops, I meant to say young Latter-day Saints. What was I thinking? Helping people avoid deception and defeat the devil. All for the low, low price of $20 plus shipping and handling. That's quite a deal, isn't it? Because when you're busy telling people what to think and how to avoid specters, genies, ghouls, and ghosts, of course, all of that is going to come with a handsome price tag. The irony practically jumps off the page. See, it's always interesting how these spiritual guides, warning about demonic deception or even instructions on how to protect your imaginary soul, seem to be conveniently overpriced. You'd think that something that is so important as to save someone's eternal soul from eternal damnation would be, free? Kind of like the Mormon News Roundup? But nope. Instead, we're treated to a price that makes you wonder if the real deception is the markup for some dubious content meant to play on people's fears through spiritual and emotional manipulation. Now let's briefly break down each sentence on the cover of the book.
A guide for young saints to avoid deception and defeat the devil.
Again, how do you know that the devil is real? It's a pretty bold claim to assume that there's some malevolent force at work here on this planet, especially when there's no solid, verifiable evidence of the devil's existence. Just like the Antichrist Playbook itself, it's all based on unproven assumptions. I mean, if we're going to avoid deception, shouldn't we start by questioning the foundation of these claims to begin with?
What if you had the chance to look at the devil's playbook? Would you do it?
Oh, absolutely I would. That would provide some solid evidence that the devil is real. And I'm all about some empirical evidence, finally. But spoiler alert, we're not going to look at the devil's playbook, folks. Instead, we're just going to look at one guy's self-proclaimed interpretation of what's right and wrong, wrapped up in a book he's trying to sell. What a spectacular disappointment.
Satan has sent his team of antichrists onto the field against you and me.
More baseless assertions, fear-mongering, and emotional manipulation. It's always convenient when your opponent is some shadowy, invisible force. It makes it much easier to sell protection from this invisible enemy while convincing you that you need to be on high alert for antichrists. Classic scare tactics.
They're ferocious, and they have a book of tried and true plays that have scored time and time again against the children of Adam.
It's amusing that I guess the Paul brothers would consider me part of this ferocious Antichrist squad, but for some reason I was never given access to this elusive playbook. Like, is there a link from the devil that went to my spam folder or something? I don't know, for any demons out there that are listening, you can definitely drop me a line to kolob@mormonnewsroundup.org. I guess I'm just missing out, aren't I? And as for the children of Adam, we can literally prove that Adam and Eve didn't exist. It's an etiological myth. A story meant to explain the origins of mankind by anonymous, illiterate goat herders. And it's not a literal account of events. Get a clue.
But you and I have the Book of Mormon.
Ah yes, 19th century Bible fan fiction. How exactly is this supposed to help? It's got all of the drama of a soap opera with none of the coherence or archaeological foundations of a real historical record. So let me get this straight. This book is supposed to be the tool to lead people to accept the glad tidings of the polygamous gospel of Joseph Smith? Call me underwhelmed.
The Book of Mormon was created to bring people to Christ.
Why is that at all desirable? If it's based on historical contradictions and inaccuracies, why would we want to base our life's purpose and salvation on something that's so easily debunked? Maybe people should be striving to find the truth, not just following a book that tells them what they want to hear. And there's no good reason to preference Jesus' teachings, and a lot of reasons not to.
One way it does that is by exposing the playbook of Satan and his Antichrist bruisers.
Ah, here we go again with the playbook narrative. Seriously, how many mythical foes do we have to fight in this battle? This all just seems like an endless loop of manipulation and distraction. I mean, it's not even about the truth at this point. It's all about selling fear to keep you coming back for more protection.
Shirem, Nehor, and Korihor and their modern descendants go hard in the paint for Team Lucifer.
Here's the problem, my guy. You're trying to name drop these spiritual strawmen to make your point. But listen to me, they're just characters in a made-up story. Nehor, Sherem, and Korihor? Man, it's hard to keep track of all of Joseph Smith's boogeymen. I'd love to see some real evidence that these individuals existed, in reality. Outside of the pages of the Book of Mormon. But believe me, I'm not holding my breath.
Twisting scripture, peddling counterfeits, and denying reality are just a few tricks that these antichrists use to destroy testimony and crush belief.
Oh, I think I see it now. Twisting scripture, peddling counterfeits, and denying reality is reserved for anyone who disagrees with your worldview. That sure is convenient. Could it be that these antichrists are just people who ask questions you don't want to hear and don't have good answers for? I mean, that seems like the real issue here. You defending a narrative that falls apart under the slightest scrutiny. And just to be clear, I don't twist any scripture. I see absolutely no reason to appeal to any scripture as authoritative, and you haven't provided any evidence to the contrary.
But the prophets of the Book of Mormon and the prophets of our own day go harder.
Ah, that's what she said. But seriously, the whole prophet thing is highly problematic. You keep saying that these prophets go harder, but I've seen no compelling evidence that their so-called divine guidance is any more reliable than a fortune cookie. How about you show us some real fruit from these prophetic claims? Like a real prophecy from a real member of the Q15 who is alive today.
They show us the moves of the Antichrist players and the counters to those moves.
You mean like showing us more absurd, baseless claims? Here's what the enemy is doing, followed by some arbitrary counter strategy that is based on an ancient book's interpretation of truth. Sorry, but no. If these are the best moves you've got, then you're playing on a field that doesn't even exist.
Paying attention to the Book of Mormon and to the guidance of modern prophets gives you and me the skills and the moves we need to win on the field of life and stay close to Christ no matter how scary or how attractive the enemy might seem.
Isn't it just a little suspicious that these skills and moves that we're getting here are all tied to a system that requires blind faith and zero critical thinking? Sounds like a path towards intellectual stagnation rather than the road to enlightenment. And who the heck is this enemy? Like anyone who dares question the system?
This book is fire scripture packed, unrelatable. It's the perfect guide for teens ready to crush the modern anti-Mormon lies. Seriously, get this book before the devil finds out it exists.
Wait, we're supposed to take the endorsement of a pest control specialist and TSA knife smuggler seriously? Like, really? I mean, just on a personal level here, Carton compared me to a neo-Nazi, called me a Hamas terrorist, said I was a QAnon conspiracy theorist who thought that Jews were behind an international banking conspiracy, and he says that ex-Mormons need to be squished like stinging bees. And I'm just getting warmed up here, I could go on. And you think that's okay? Like, you're totally fine with that? Like, that's who you got to endorse your laughable playbook? That's some pretty sick stuff, seriously.
When it comes to nicknames of the church, such as LDS Church, the Mormon Church, to remove the Lord's name from the Lord's church is a major victory for Satan.
Satan.